Shall I wait for people to straggle in, or shall I go ahead and begin? I've got a lot of slides to share, so.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get started and people can jump on a little bit late, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like they'll still be able to enter the meeting once you've started, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Then you can more than welcome to get started.
Well, thank you for inviting me to this, to join you today on this presentation of Songbirds of the Northeast. I'm sure everyone listening is a bird watcher, a bird lover, aren't we all, right? Songbirds of the Northeast, featuring photography by Lloyd Spitalnik. If you want to see fantastic nature photography and especially birds, check out his website, Lloyd Spitalnik. Also, Joe Oliverio. I knew him before he was famous. He and I are both Amherst natives. Recordings from allaboutbirds.org and Lang Elliott are also worth checking out. And there are many kinds of birds in the world. If you're an ornithologist, you know them all. And you even know how to spell and pronounce these words. If you go all the way down to the bottom of the list, passeriformes, these are the songbirds. Passerines, perching birds are other names for songbirds. Some of these other birds sing too, technically, but they are not, according to ornithologists, a member of this particular group, which is actually the most advanced group of birds. There's more songbirds or more passerines than all the rest of the birds in the world combined. And here they are way up top, right next to the parrots. That's how closely related songbirds are to parrots and falcons, interestingly. So if they're related to parrots, you can believe that some of them at least are pretty intelligent. Here's a parrot that some of you might know, Life with Alex. Irene Pepperberg is the scientist who lived with and studied Alex. Alex used to say, "You be good, I love you, see you tomorrow," every night when Irene would leave her. Truly an amazing and inspiring bird, and an amazing and inspiring duo, the two of them. Well, if you're a songbird, you have anisodactyl toes, 3 claws in front, 1 in back. You have 12 tail feathers, 6 on each side. You have a syrinx, not a larynx, to make sound. We have a larynx, it's in our throat, and you use it, you can feel it vibrate when you sing or speak or hum. Well, birds have a syrinx that's way down, just right above the lungs, as you can see. And here is the complex musculature of the syrinx, and birds can sing independently from both sides of their syrinx. What I'm saying is that they can actually harmonize with themselves. You're going to hear a recording of a bird harmonizing with itself because it's independently controlling those 2 parts of its syrinx. And they have the brains to operate such a fantastic sound producing machine. Look at this songbird brain compared to a non-songbird brain. A lot of things going on in terms of neurons, auditory input and vocal output. Now, usually colored, often speckled eggs in songbirds. Can you use my key and do it? You can do it, I think. Okay, usually colored, often speckled eggs. There are exceptions. Some robins have just plain old eggs without speckles. Now, robins are altricial. They are blind, featherless, and helpless at birth. That's a lot like us. We are also helpless at birth. We're not blind or featherless, but well, yes, I guess we are featherless. But anyway, compared to other birds, these are quite helpless, but it's only a matter of weeks before those birds will fledge and fly. Archaeopteryx is the ancestor of all birds. It used to be a reptile, and you can see how it's becoming a bird, but it's still somewhat reptile-like, including the claws, sprouting feathers on its front arms, which will become wings and already have become wings, but still has the claws, still has teeth in its beak, still has those feet, those hind legs. Don't they remind you of a chicken's feet? So anytime you see a bird, you're looking at a fancy dinosaur. Long time ago, they have ancestral dinosaurs in their blood. So you can appreciate birds even if you're blind. Here's a Association for the Blind field trip in 2010. And you can appreciate birds in so many ways. Check out Massachusetts Audubon Society, and there you will find 36 wildlife sanctuaries all over the state. and a lot of information about landscaping for birds, conservation, education, advocacy. So much information there. Massbird.org is the website where you'll find all the Massachusetts bird clubs listed, and you can join a listserv if you like. And then there's also a New England birding calendar if you like to keep track of where the birds are when. Here's the first bird we're going to hear. It's a fairly primitive songbird. It's eastern wood pewee. It's in the tyrant flycatcher family, and it's going to say its own name. Pee-wee, ah-dee-dee, wee-you. Let's do that again. Pee-wee, ah-dee-dee, wee-you. Now notice that you didn't hear these two peaks of pitch. You didn't hear wee-wee. All you heard was pee-wee, and that's because I'm sure that the female pewee could hear that, but their ears can pick up these sudden changes a lot more accurately than we can. And how about this? Wee-you. You can see the graph shows that it went, it sounded like wee-you, wee-you, right? That sudden jump in pitch. All we hear is wee-you. So it proves that they can make sounds that change just a lickety-split, just a tiny amount of time. They can go, rise up and plunge back down, and you won't even hear it. Here's the eastern pewee on its nest. Here's the eggs which are spotted but not colored. Another tyrant flycatcher. These tyrant flycatcher birds don't need to learn their songs from their parents. They actually know them by instinct. Eastern phoebe says its own name as well. Phoebe, phoebe. Phoebe is the bird that bobs its tail up and down, and it's a true harbinger of spring. So when you see a bird bobbing its tail up and down this spring, you'll know it's the phoebe, and you'll know that it's spring because this is a migrant from down south. Great crested flycatcher is the largest of the tyrant flycatchers. I don't think I've ever seen this one. It's higher up in the branches, and you might hear it more likely than see it. And if it can find a snake skin and put it on its nest, well, that serves as a warning to predators. There might be a snake lurking about. That's an instinct that great crested flycatcher has to improve the chances of survival of its chicks. Eastern kingbird, Tyrannus tyrannus. Now, how in the world would you have a bird named Eastern kingbird, Tyrannus tyrannus? What would that mean? Well, it just so happens that the Eastern kingbird is perfectly capable of chasing away large.
All right, you know what? You'll have to get it. It's too late.
It's perfectly capable of chasing a large hawk or a crow out of its area. The first thing it does is it shows its red racing stripe, if you will, on its head. And then, as you can see, it rises up and lands on the back of that bird and starts pecking on its head mercilessly. And all this is to chase the bird away from its mate's nest. It's telling this bird, you are way too close for comfort. You don't belong here. I'm protecting my mate and I'm protecting her nest. You get out of here. And it's a small bird, but boy, does it know what to do. And that's why it's called Tyrannus tyrannus, the kingbird. Look at this one. Actually landed on a bald eagle's head and pecking on it, making sure that that bald eagle is not up to any mischief and will get out of his territory. Northern shrike is a pretty formidable bird too. Look at that beak that's curved over, and they are capable of taking out other birds as well as small rodents like shrews, voles, moles, and mice, and snakes. And the red-eyed vireo. Here am I, where are you? Here am I, where are you? Over and over and over again. It's just incessant. Sometimes they call it the preacher bird. Here am I, where are you? And the warbling vireo. If I seize you, I will seize you and I'll squeeze you till you squirt. Someone had fun making that one up. And the blue jay, a bird that everyone knows quite well. I'm having trouble with this CD, so I'm going to change CDs. So blue jays are capable of making a wide variety of sounds. They're in the crow family, the Corvidae.
That sounds like Pee-wee.
Okay, here we go. This is the blue jay. At first he's sounding a little bit like a crow, and then now he sounds more like a hawk.
Oh, that was a jay.
Both a father and mother are responsible for rearing the young. Sometimes the older brothers and sisters will get involved too. Here's the crow. They can be in huge flocks roosting at night. Very intelligent birds. There's quite a vocabulary here. Isn't that interesting? The repertoire of sounds they can make is truly impressive. They can solve problems. They can invent and use tools. They can remember people. And then there's some people who need to there's some people who need to mute. I'm hearing some voices. Could you please mute? And here is the common raven. Sounds like a crow with a sore throat. The largest songbird of them all. You can tell a raven if you see a large black bird soaring, because crows don't soar very much, but ravens can. Isn't that a wild sound? They like high places. Again, amazing repertoire of sounds that they can make. Now this is the purple martin, one of our most favorite birds. People love purple martins because they eat so many mosquitoes. And this is how you attract purple martins. They insist on having accommodations like this. Tree swallow. There are a number of other swallows: cliff swallow, barn swallow, bank swallow. And now the black-capped chickadee singing, "Hey, sweetie." That's the signature song of the black-capped chickadee. Here you see it. Hey, sweetie. Hey, sweetie. And now this is the scolding call of the chickadee, and the higher number of D's at the end, the more they are insistent that there's danger. Now, what you're hearing at this time, sweetie he, sweetie hey, sweetie hey, that is the Martha's Vineyard dialect. Only on Martha's Vineyard do they say sweetie hey instead of hey sweetie. And you can actually get black-capped chickadees to come to your hand. As a matter of fact, at Ipswich Sanctuary, one of the Mass Audubon sanctuaries north of Boston, the birds are already tamed. They know that people are safe. They know that they can trust people, not just black-capped chickadees, other birds too, tufted titmice and the like. Now, speaking of tufted, this is a bird closely related to the black-capped chickadee. Whoop, that's not it. This is it. Right here. Peter, 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 Peter. They make a lot of different sounds, actually. And now the red-breasted nuthatch sounds like a toy horn. This is a big sound for such a small bird. We don't see too many of these anymore. And white-breasted nuthatch saying, what? This is the upside-down bird. And it's looking for interesting morsels to eat as it goes down the tree. Oh, some more white-breasted nuthatch calls. The brown creeper goes up the tree. It's looking for tempting morsels of food underneath the bark. So that's why he's going up the tree, circling around in a spiral fashion up the tree, and then he'll drop down and start at the base of another tree and do the same thing. And those cute little wrens. I've been watching a Carolina wren come right up to my deck here. I put out some old black walnut shells with meats in them, and the Carolina wren is eagerly seeking out those kernels of nuts and eating them. They're such charming little birds. They're with the tails straight up. They'll nest in the most unlikely places. And they can also be quite aggressive. Here's a house wren song, a bubbling musical series of complicated whistles, notes, and trills. This is the winter wren. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is an extremely complex song. This is the sonogram. Song of the winter wren. Unbelievable, quite remarkable how many notes it can cram into just a few seconds. Marsh wren is also no slouch. Pretty complex song. They all are, really, all these wrens. And this is one of their softball-sized nests. The males, there it is, the males will make maybe 15 different nests in the swamp, and to confuse the predators. They're all dummy nests, and the one that's the real nest is going to be in a more secluded place. Hopefully the predator won't find it. Golden crowned kinglet, an amazingly small bird. Much smaller than a black-capped chickadee. High-pitched song, followed by a lower musical warble. Now you're hearing the ruby-crowned kinglet, a beautiful song that reminds you of spring. And I seem to be having technical difficulties again with my CD. So let me choose a different one. Oh, the bluebird, our favorite, many people's favorite at any rate. Yeah. The bluebirds intense, colorful plumage is for breeding in the spring, but in the fall, it's more muted colors. This is how you court the female. You give her food. Interesting bluebird facts. And male, it's interesting to note that the bluebirds have actually been observed to catch larger prey items such as shrews, salamanders, snakes, lizards, and tree frogs. This cute little bird is capable of doing some serious hunting. This is what the bluebird egg looks like compared to the other eggs that you're familiar with. And it doesn't take too long for those chicks to hatch. In a matter of days, there we go up to we're at 2 weeks here and 2.5 weeks, and they're fledged. These are male and female adult bluebirds roosting together, presumably in the winter when it's cold. They found a hollowed out tree trunk. You'll see the bright blue males and the more muted colored females. Now the veery is a thrush. Such an ethereal song. The thrushes are all just such a delight to hear. Another thrush, the hermit thrush, you'll hear the hermit thrush start with one melodious fluty note, like a clear whistle, and then followed by a warble. And that whistled note is always on a different pitch. Each time he starts a song, it'll be a different one. Now here's the bird that I promised you were going to hear a bird harmonizing with itself. The recording that you're about to hear is at 1/10 speed. And you're going to first hear the sound coming from one side of its syrinx, and then the sound coming from the other side of its syrinx. Somehow they were able to isolate these two different sounds in the recording studio. And then you'll hear both sides of the syrinx together in harmony. Oops. Here we go. There's the other side. And that is the harmony that you will not be able to hear at normal speed, because as I've said before, birds can not only create these amazingly complex songs over such a small period of time, but they can also hear them, and we cannot. So here is what our ears hear. This is what it looks like, the harmonic. In fact, if you'll notice, there are 3 different pitches simultaneously, because the one of those syrinxes is actually producing 2 notes simultaneously, the lower and the higher, which is a harmonic of the lower. So here it is, the actual sound, real speed of the wood thrush, the actual song. I think of the wood thrush as the nightingale of the northeastern forests. The delightful variety that you hear. You never know what you're going to hear next. Now we hear the robin, and believe it or not, the robin is also a thrush. A much more plebeian kind of bird, and not nearly as exciting a song, at least not to our ears. Robins don't need cavities to nest. They usually nest on ledges. And then the gray catbird, a fairly common bird. It's pretty bold. It'll fly fairly close to you, and it likes to hang out in shrubs. So you can be eye to eye with the catbird. and it knows how to imitate a lot of other birds, but I think that it's making up a lot of sounds as well. There's the cat sound that it makes. A mockingbird. He likes to repeat himself at least 3 or 4 times. He'll say something, repeat it, and then pause, say something else, repeat it, and then pause. I was just reading the journal of one of my ancestors back from the pre-Civil War times, and they and this girl recalled when she was a girl, there was an injured turkey that they kept in the house, and the mockingbird learned how to make the song of this poor turkey in distress. So when they heard the sound of the turkey in distress, they never knew whether they were listening to the real turkey or the mockingbird. He's an excellent mimic. He can mimic car alarms. He can mimic other birds, certainly. And it can be a pretty aggressive bird. It'll chase other birds away from its territory, or even humans if you get close to its nest. I love listening to mockingbirds because they are so endlessly inventive. And then there's a brown thrasher, another Mimidae bird, a bird in the Mimidae family. This is 1, 2, right? They always come in pairs, these songs, or usually in pairs. 1, 2. Thrashers are much less common than catbirds and mockingbirds here in the Northeast. Last time I saw one was down in Virginia. Now here is a very common bird, the European starling. This is actually a non-native bird. You might not find this song very appealing, but you have to admit it's pretty complex. And starlings are relatives of mynah birds. In fact, Mozart had a pet starling, and he was able to teach it his own music. The starling would sing Mozart's music to him. And they were very close buddies for Mozart for the entire life of that starling. Here you can hear the starling sounding like a hawk. One of my favorite birds, the cedar waxwing. They love to eat fruit, and they'll strip a tree clean sometimes, and then move on to the next tree. And this is not a cedar waxwing. This is actually a Bohemian waxwing. We don't have too many of them here. They're more common farther north. These are all photos by Joe Oliverio. He loves to catch them in interesting positions. As you can see, there are many warblers in New England. I don't have the time to show all of them to you and play recordings of them. I'll give you a representative sampling though. If you're curious about learning more about warblers, you can go to ebird.org and find out where and when they're arriving. And of course, the best way to learn about birds is to join a bird club. Find out if there's a bird club near your area, near where you are. And hopefully when these when this pandemic finally opens up and we can get back outside and in company with each other, there'll be a possibility of having bird trips once again. Chestnut-sided warbler sounds like, please, please, pleased to meet you. It's only the male that has the chestnut sides, and it's only the male who sings, which is the case with almost every songbird. It's the male that sings. They sing either to attract the male or to claim their territory and keep other males out. The yellow warbler, sweet, 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 I'm so sweet. Sweet, 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 I'm so sweet. Beautiful bird. Black and white warbler, interesting color. Sounds like a squeaky wheel. Weesey, 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 weesey. Witchety, 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 says the common yellowthroat. These are all warblers. So is this one, believe it or not. Looks like a thrush. Ovenbird is also a warbler. Gets louder and louder and louder, and our teacher, 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 teacher. And I don't have a bay-breasted warbler recording for you, nor a black-throated blue. I'm just going to show you some more, the cast of characters of the warblers. There's so many of them. Blue-winged, northern parula. What an elegant bird. Pine warbler, Blackburnian, Cape May. Even the Louisiana water thrush, according to ornithologists, is a warbler. And so is the American redstart. Look at the difference between the male and female here. Speaking of the difference between the male and the female, here we have a tanager, not a warbler at all. This is tanager, the male, striking plumage of red and black contrasting. It sounds a little bit like a robin with a sore throat. Cheery, cheery up, cheery, cheerio. Isn't it remarkable that the female has no hint of the scarlet in her coloration? Except perhaps a little around the corner of its beak. Chick-burr, chick-burr, that's another sound that they make. Chick-burr. Drink your tea, says the rufous-sided towhee. Drink your tea. It's the male singing, of course, the one with the black hood. Here he is, and here are some sonograms of what he's saying. Song sparrow, oh, one of my favorites. Such beautiful melodies. Melospisa melodia is the Latin name. Some people say he's saying, maids, 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 please put the tea kettle on. See? Maids, 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 please put the tea kettle on. But there's so many other things he says too. I just love to be outside and hearing song sparrows sing. They're endlessly inventive. And now we have the white-throated sparrow. Oh, sweet Canada, 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 Canada. That's what they think he's saying up in Canada. Here in the US, we say, oh, Sam, peepity, 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 peepity. Notice the touch of yellow on the head between the beak and the eye. And the chipping sparrow sure does sound like it's chipping. Very mechanical sound. That striking brown cap. Vesper sparrow. 2 to 4 long clear notes followed by musical slurs and trills. Fox sparrow, this is a larger sparrow that scratches around, and notice how rich and clear his song is. He scratches to dislodge things that might be hiding in the ground for it to eat. A handsome bird. Dark-eyed junco, we see them now in the winter. Sounds like a ringing telephone, right? But it does not mate here. It goes farther north. This is the summer breeding. This is the summer grounds for dark-eyed junco. Cardinal, this is exception to the rule. The female actually does sing, although it's usually the male, but the female will sometimes sing in a duet with the male, and their duet might even overlap. Cardinal used to be a southern bird, and now it's not only in New England, it's also in Canada. Rose-breasted grosbeak sounds like a robin that's taken singing lessons. Cheerily, cheery up, cheerio, cheery. Very clear, rich song. And again, the female looks nothing like the male. The male is showing off with his plumage, trying to look very handsome and striking. The female, on the other hand, it's in her interest to be as camouflaged as possible. And this evening grosbeak, I don't have any recordings of this bird, but and it's not very common anymore. Indigo bunting. Let's see here. That's the indigo bunting. Bobolink. Rolling, bubbling, jangling series of notes. Look at the male. He seems to be wearing a tuxedo backwards. It's important for meadows to be mowed at a certain time so as not to disturb with the nesting of the bobolinks. Red-winged blackbird could be the most common bird on the continent. Loves to hang out in wetland areas. The female, once again, very camouflaged. The male will sport those red epaulettes whenever he feels the need to defend his territory or show off to the female. Eastern meadowlark, what an impressive, beautiful bird. This is a bird saying, spring of the earth, a clear melodious whistle. It's a grassland bird, Eastern meadowlark. Common grackle. Not a very melodious song. It's often described as sounding like a rusty gate. Look at those intense eyes. They seem to like to hang out around water. And you'll find them in large flocks that might suddenly arrive in your yard and then just as suddenly fly off. Brown-headed cowbird is a problematic bird because it's actually a parasitic. It's called brood parasitism. The female does not know how to build her own nest, nor does she know how to raise her own chicks. What she does is lays her single egg in the nest of a different bird. And then in this case, it found the nest of a chipping sparrow. And you see how the chipping sparrow has raised that egg. It hatched, it became a cowbird. And there it is feeding, it's adopted this cowbird, having no idea that he's been fooled into raising the bird of a totally different species. Some birds, however, know exactly what's going on and will refuse to incubate that egg in the nest and even build a new nest on top of the old so that they will not be raising an upstart chick. Baltimore oriole is one of my absolute favorite birds, both the sight and the song, the sound of the Baltimore oriole, rich whistled notes interspersed with rattles. Look at that nest also. That's quite the dependent nest. Quite remarkable. They have sweet tooth. Put out slices of orange or even grape jelly, and they might help themselves to that. There's also an orchard oriole. Sounds similar. And now the pine siskin and the purple finch are part of a group that they all sound pretty much like this with the jumbled notes. This house finch looks like he's dipped his head in red paint, doesn't he? The male. And then we have the potato chip, says the goldfinch, potato chip, among other things. You'll see goldfinches flying in an up and down manner, bouncing along through the air and singing all the while sometimes. There are also a variety of birds that can be found in the spruce fir forests farther north here. So you will not find any of these birds in the Bolton area, for example, or in Massachusetts, most likely. The boreal chickadee, the gray jay, Bicknell's thrush is only found in a small area in Vermont in a spruce fir forest. Bird populations have declined precipitously by 30% in my lifetime. And they could, 2/3 of North America's birds, another third, in other words, could be gone by 2100 unless we do a lot of things very differently. This is according to National Audubon Society to provide habitat for them and protect. Rachel Carson was sounding the alarm way back in 1962 because DDT and other chemicals were being used indiscriminately, and the egg shells of raptors were so thin that they couldn't hold the eggs and broke, and there were the worms were being the worms that birds were feeding on were just had so much DDT in them that the birds concentrated that DDT in their systems. So today it's still true that 67 million birds every year are killed by agricultural pesticides. And this is not DDT now, it's neonicotinoids that are the most dangerous chemicals. And so you need to be aware and never use these in your home garden, certainly. Another risk for birds is that when they see large windows, they see in the reflection, they think it's part of nature, and they just keep flying into what they think is more of the outdoors. So collisions kill a lot of birds every year. And you can do, if you go to abcbirds.org, you can see a variety of things that can be done to protect windows or to show birds that this is a window, this is not more of the outside. You can also put a water bath out, and these illustrations show it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Here's that picture of what it looks like to the bird, these windows. And cat predation is also a large problem for bird mortality. And in fact, if you think about it, cats aren't safe themselves when they're outside. Here are 4 different predators that can take cats out. So you could build a catio for your house, for your house cat, or you could just let them watch out the window. You could even train them to be on a leash. Habitat loss from industrial agriculture, residential development, and commercial development is really probably the largest reason why we are losing so many birds and so many other wildlife species. Here's that slide. I have it out of order, but these are some of the ways that you can put things on windows to show birds that this is not a place that can fly safely. Climate change is another serious concern because the birds are arriving out of kilter. They're out of sync with the food sources that they need. Their migration patterns are disrupted. So here's another water feature. You can hang water from a branch of a tree. Some more water possibilities. And in the winter, it's fairly inexpensive to just put one of these water heaters, and birds really appreciate having water in the winter that they can drink and bathe in. You can feed the birds, but not with junk food, and anything that's baked, just about anything that's baked is heavily processed, contains preservatives. If it's made with white flour, it's refined, contains little protein, lacks fat. This is junk food for birds. Instead, you can feed them seeds, of course. And this is angel wing deformity, is what happens to birds who are fed unprocessed food like that. So here are some approved foods for songbirds. Apart from the seeds, of course, and the suet that you can buy at the store. You can be creative about your bird feeder stations, and If you have open stations like this, you will need to clean them fairly frequently. These are more closed, won't need quite as much cleaning. Here's one that it's very easy to monitor because you can see it up close, window feeder, and it sure does bring them up close to for your viewing pleasure. It's also more likely to be out of the reach of bears, which can be a problem in some areas. Feeder placement, at least 10 feet off the ground for bears, and they should be very sturdy, the poles, 10 feet from anything bears can climb, and keep the area under the feeder clean. You can make homemade suet feeders, and you can also make homemade suet from these ingredients. Audubon.org will give you the recipe. It's not recommended for outdoor temperatures above 50 because it can turn rancid. So you can also make boxes for different kinds of birds. This one's a bluebird box, and back in a century ago, it looked like bluebirds might become extinct in America. And then there was a concerted effort to create bluebird trails, just to put up a lot of bluebird boxes, and it really did, and they were monitored. So that really helped considerably, and now there are a lot of bluebirds around. So if you go to this allbirds.com website, you will find instructions for many different kinds of birds if you'd like to focus on the bird that you'd like to welcome to your backyard, or you might want several if you're the handy type and have the tools to do it. This is a Peterson bluebird box that I made with some help, and it's useful to have to be able to open up the box like this, to clean it and to inspect it. It's also great to have protection. This piece of metal on top will prevent this box from rotting over the years. Most bluebird houses have a life expectancy of only a few years because they will rot, but this one would last. This has a lifetime guarantee, even though it's made of pine. Birdhouse don'ts: no bright colors because that attracts attention to predators. No perches because the birds don't need them, and predators can grab a hold of them and get perches and make it easier for them to come in and raid that birdhouse. And in order to protect birdhouses from squirrels, squirrels love to make those openings wider so they can get in. You can put some of these are preventative measures to make sure only birds can use those birdhouses. So birds need food, water, shelter, and places to rear their young. And adult birds need protein, they need fruit, and they need seeds as well. So here is a starter list offered by Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology. Their website is allaboutbirds.org, a wonderful website to learn more about birds, about every bird you've just seen and more. Individual, just interesting information about each separate bird, but also information such as this: how to welcome the birds to your yard. And the number one tree, interestingly, is an oak, because there are so many caterpillars that visit oak leaves, and birds love caterpillars. Black-capped chickadee mother needs 7,000 to 9,000 caterpillars to raise a brood of chicks. So, and the caterpillars only show up on the native trees, not on the non-native trees. The problem with non-native trees is that the caterpillars hadn't figured out how to crack the chemical codes. They have their chemical defenses, but caterpillars have been evolving along with the native trees, such as this oak, for millions of years. So they've figured out how their bodies have learned how to digest oak leaves. Birds love mulberries, and it's a messy tree, so you don't want it placed right over your driveway or sidewalk. But if you have a good place out in the backyard, a corner, someplace where you don't mind if there's a mess on the lawn, mulberries are absolutely delicious for people and birds alike. You will be amazed at how many birds will come and visit this tree. And it's a beautiful tree with its glossy looking leaves. Both black cherry and choke cherry are native trees. They are cherries. They taste like cherries, and birds love them. Those flowers are also great for pollinators. And it's important to have pollinator plants blooming in the spring like this. Another one of my favorite landscape trees is the Juneberry, also called serviceberry, shadbush, Saskatoon, a lot of common names for this tree. Beautiful every season. Those fruits are absolutely delicious, but the birds usually get them first. So it's a small tree, very ornamental. You can grow it just about anywhere. I highly recommend Juneberry for your landscape. Another tree with many names, black tupelo, sassafras. Many birds will help themselves to this fruit. Beautiful in the fall as well. Crabapple, again, very valuable for both pollinators and for birds. Likewise with hawthorn. Red osier dogwood, beautiful in every season, including in the winter with those red, strikingly red branches. And the birds just love those fruits. And they also love any dogwood, really, and any viburnum. Here's that Juneberry again. Elderberry, one of their favorites, and one of my favorites as well. You can cook with elderberries. It's not safe for humans to eat raw berries, but if you gather them when they're ripe, and you can make delicious elderberry pancakes or muffins, for example. Spicebush, this has a very high fat content, which is important for birds. It's also the host plant for the spicebush swallowtail. And it's an important spring blooming plant for pollinators that have just woken up in the spring and are hungry. Crabapple, I showed you already. Gray dogwood, another one of those dogwoods. And hawthorn, staghorn sumac, flaming foliage in the fall. And those fruits will persist into the winter and be food for the birds. This tree a small tree can get pretty aggressive. It spreads quite effectively, and it's quite valuable to the birds. So let's see, Aronia, black chokeberry. Now the people often think of this as an ornamental, which it certainly is, but they are not aware that the fruits can be eaten if they're cooked, and they are actually absolutely delicious. This information here about the plant can be found at MissouriBotanicalGarden.org. And if you're curious about any plant, all you have to do is type the name of the plant, for example, black chokeberry, which, by the way, is different from black chokecherry, totally different. Type the name and then type Missouri. Do a search for those two things, and you will find the Missouri Botanical Garden information such as this and more about that plant. It's an amazing resource, like an encyclopedia online. Well, it's hard to argue to call blueberries ornamental as well as edimental, edible ornamentals. And birds love blueberries. This is a weed that birds eat the fruit of, a pokeweed. Some native plums, American plum and beach plum, are also attractive to birds, and the flowers are good for the pollinators. Blackberry, birds love them. Winterberry, now there's in the winter, these berries are available for the birds that are just hanging in there and living here throughout the winter. They use this source of nourishment. You do need both a male and a female plant. The male flower is required to pollinate the female so that it'll grow those fruits. Here's the holly that you're familiar with. These fruits are not edible for us, but are edible for birds. Bayberry, again, a fruit available in the winter. And then conifers are valuable for shelter and for roosting, and sometimes for food. Sometimes the seeds and sometimes larvae are found in conifers. Seed-filled cones of the white spruce. They're host plants for more than 150 butterflies and moths. There's the blue spruce. White pine, also host plants for more than 200 butterflies and moths. And there's a lot of wildlife that eats those seeds. Eastern red cedar. This is one of the most beautiful ground covers there is. birds, and not just bears, but also birds will eat those fruits. And you can see the flowers look like little blueberry flowers, a very effective ground cover in the bright, right out there in the bright sunshine. Here's a woodland plant that's attractive to birds. And now sunflower, of course, what bird wouldn't jump at the chance to eat sunflower seeds? But sunflower is not the only plant with edible seeds. The black-eyed Susan, purple coneflower, they both look like sunflowers. And so not surprisingly, they also have edible seeds. And in fact, here are more members of the aster family that also, just like the sunflower, sedum is the only one in this group that is not a member of the aster family. All the rest are, and they all have edible seeds for birds. So the idea here is not to do a fall cleanup and chop them all down, because then those plants will no longer be able to offer their seeds to the birds in the wintertime. So do your cleanup in the spring after the maybe at least 5 days of 50-degree temperature or so, then you can cut back your plants. So leave the leaves. This is an important thing for habitat, creating habitat for birds, because there's so many insects and such that are hanging out in those leaves that'll become part of the bird's diet. Leave dead trees and snags. For obvious reasons if you're a bird, right? Again, a place to raise your young and also to find insects that are hiding out. And as I mentioned, leave those seed stalks standing over winter, because they are sources for both bird nourishment and for places for insects, valuable insects to hang out. Brush piles are for the birds and other critters as well. All the wildlife, and it's a web of life, you know, so the more diversity you have out there, the healthier every individual plant is, every individual animal, excuse me. Now you'll see, of course, a lot of this kind of thing where you expect it to have a perfect lawn and look like a carpet, as if you're, you know, as if you wanted it to look like it's inside and you can treat it that way. Well, it's not supposed to be a carpet. It's supposed to be nature. This is a food desert for animals. There's nothing there. In fact, there might be a lot of toxic chemicals, polluter and a resource guzzler. So they're also too much trouble. We take a lot of time and we have to dispose of that waste sometimes. And we spend a lot of money on those lawns. So what else could we do? Well, how about a wildflower meadow? And if you go to extension.nh.edu, you'll learn all you need to know about wildflower. Well, perhaps not all you need to know. I think the best thing might be to trust a landscaping professional to help you make one. But in the end, even after that initial expenditure, over the years, you would find yourself saving a lot of money and just having the delight of watching all the wildlife show up, all those wonderful pollinators and the birds that are coming to eat the insects. So nature will thank you. Now, if you have areas of your lawn that you want to transform, the left is the wrong way and the right is the correct way. You don't want to use killing chemicals. You don't want to be digging out the grass. It compacts the soil, it depletes the soil nutrients. So you harm the beneficial organisms that way. But if you just if you smother the grass, then the grass decomposes. The cardboard is part of that smothering layer. It also decomposes, and the compost and mulch layers hold the moisture and all the beneficial organisms are in the soil are thriving because you've done this. You're giving them a lot of nutrients. So this is how you start. You scalp your lawn, the part that you want to convert to a nature preserve, and you soak it, and then you put down cardboard or newspaper and you soak that, and then you cover it with mulch or maybe compost and mulch, depending on how much fertility you need. When you're planting wildflowers, you often don't need too much extra fertility. In fact, you don't want to encourage weeds, which love to have a lot of extra compost and a fertile soil. That gives them a chance to outcompete the wildflowers. So according to the Birdorable blog, there's several ways to manage your lawn organically and reduce it by 25% is one of their suggestions. Several ways to save birds. Keep your cats inside, as we mentioned. Wake up to bird-friendly coffee. This is an example of a coffee grove that's Rainforest Alliance certified, because they are growing plants in the underlayer. And so that's much more favorable and friendly to the birds that have migrated down here Fill your yard with native plants, of course, so that those insects will come. It's good for the insects. It's good for the birds that are feeding on them. Recycle those six-pack rings. Plastic bags and aluminum cans can also be nuisances. Eat less meat and dairy. This is interesting. Look at the greenhouse gas footprint for the average diet compared to a vegan, and then anything in between. So most of us could figure out how to work our way down that chart towards the vegan end and discover that we wouldn't really be suffering in terms of our enjoyment of our food, and we might even be healthier. Leave a good part of your yard natural with bushes and ground cover. Keep dead trees in your yard. Lop off rather than chop down dead trees. And then another list that's offered by Landscaping for Birds, Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology. Create a songbird border. Plant long-lived native trees. Create a brush pile. Rake the leaves under the shrubs and leave them there. And then remove the invasive plants from your property. And there are many ways to discover which are the invasives. Going to your website, going to your internet. Reduce your lawn, again, by at least 25% to create some kind of natural feature, a meadow or trees or shrubs. Clean out old bird and mouse nests. Create a bathing and drinking pool. Clean tube feeders of hummingbirds. Rake up the seed from under the feeders that could grow mold. Move feeders close to the house to avoid window strikes. And keep your cat indoors. So once global warming is something that most people can feel in the course of their daily lives, it will be too late to prevent much larger, potentially catastrophic changes. These are the words of Elizabeth Colbert, who wrote The Sixth Extinction. And we are certainly in an extinction that's wholly caused by humanity. So it's a problem we've caused. It's a problem that we have a responsibility to fix. And so I'd like to thank everyone who's joined me today for your part in doing what needs to be done to ensure that future generations of wildlife will be able to live, and indeed that humanity itself that depends on a healthy ecosystem will be able to persist into the centuries and millennia to come. We only have one planet. There is no planet B. So I'd be happy to hear any comments or questions that you might have at this time. Does anyone have a comment or a question?
I was wondering if you could send Heather some of those websites, the links. It would be nice to have those to follow up on.
I certainly could.
Yeah, this is Alison. I just wanted to say how useful this was. There's a lot of information there. I'm not sure that I have enough years left to get to know all the different bird sounds, but really appreciate it, John. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. You know, this is something, if you go to allaboutbirds.org, that's the Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology website, All About Birds. You can find the bird that you're curious about and then click on it and you can hear the recording played right there.
Yeah. It was very interesting.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yep, definitely.
Well, I wish everyone
now
best.
it's you.
Any other questions or comments?
I don't have any, but thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Have a good day, everyone.
You too.